everyone, my name is Allie and welcome back to my channel. So it has been quite a while since I talked to you guys last. It is now 2025. I'm actually filming this on January 3rd. So let me just give like a backstory as to why it has been such a long time since I've not only filmed but also uploaded. So basically what happened is my mom got sick a few days before Christmas and she was really the only one that was sick, so I kind of thought like, okay, none of us got it, it's totally fine, I think we're in the clear. And I almost always get sick in December, but usually it's kind of more of like a cold and not necessarily any other kind of sickness. But what my mom had, we think, was probably norovirus, and so I totally thought I was in the clear. I thought it was fine. And then on Christmas night my brother got sick, and then literally a couple hours later I got sick, and it was pretty bad. It was pretty gnarly. That was basically the entire timeline of like getting sick, recovering, and now it's the new year. So yeah, I basically just wanted to kind of give you guys an explanation as to like where I've been, because I haven't uploaded in 2 weeks, and I also needed to like clean my room, and because, you know, I'd been sick, so I hadn't really been able to keep up with cleaning and stuff like that. So I had to clean my room, I had to get all of my stuff kind of prepared and like put together. So it just kind of ended up being a bit of an ordeal, and now I am back. I'm feeling a lot better. I feel like I'm totally recovered, and I am ready to talk about the books that I read in December. So December was kind of a tricky month because I was doing Vlogmas, and then also I wanted to read a lot of like Christmas, wintry type of books, but unfortunately I discovered that I do not like Christmas romances, and that is kind of what I had planned on reading a lot of in December. So my plans kind of got derailed. I just kind of realized that people don't really write very good Christmas romances, just on a whole. I think I probably went through close to 24 Christmas romances and DNF'd the majority of them. I DNF'd so many books in December. I just could not find anything I wanted to read. I couldn't find a good book. I kept feeling like I was picking up these books and then just absolutely hating them nearly immediately. I just had like zero patience for any sort of like mediocrity in any of the books I was reading. So I only ended up finishing, I believe, 5 books, which isn't terrible considering the fact that I DNF'd so many books, but also not really how I wanted to end 2024. So that was unfortunate, but I do want to talk about the books I read in December. So starting off, I read Fall Into You by Caroline Frank. This is like a fall inspired romance. It was super short and really just kind of like an inoffensive, middle of the road, adorable romance. Like there wasn't really any substance or really anything there that was different or exciting. It was just very run-of-the-mill. Basically it's about this one girl. She's just gotten out of this relationship that wasn't very good for her, and she is back home, I believe, for like Thanksgiving, for kind of like the holiday season, and she kind of ends up getting into this relationship with her brother's best friend, and from there it's just kind of like a very predictable brother's best friend kind of romance. The one thing I did really appreciate about this book is that I really liked the family dynamics in this book. I really liked the main character's relationship with her brother. I liked her relationship with her sister-in-law. I thought that was really cute, and the fact that she's like an aunt to her niece and nephew, I thought that was super adorable. I really love just like getting to see families in romance books. I will say there is a trope, or like sort of like kind of a trope that happens within this book that I did see a lot of reviews critique. However, I thought that this was one of the parts of this book that was done really interestingly and isn't really done in the way that it's typically done. Like I saw a lot of people DNF this book because there is kind of like a seemingly overprotective brother trope, but that's not really what's going on. If you read the book, if you get through the entirety of the book, you'll see that that's not really what's going on. I don't want to spoil anything too much, so I'll leave it at that, but I did think that that was a really interesting aspect of this book. The next book that I ended up finishing in December was Second Chance Mistletoe Kisses by Anne Marie Meyer. This is like a little Christmas novella. Not very good in my opinion. It was just very mediocre. It was just very blah. I felt like the writing style was a little corny, which, I mean, that's just kind of what is to be expected, I guess, from these Christmas romances. It's like just really corny language, really corny characters. I personally don't think that that's how it has to be. I think that authors could write really interesting and fun and sweet and romantic romance books set during Christmas. They just choose not to for some reason. I have a huge beef with authors who write Christmas romance books because I'm like, it really doesn't have to be that hard, and it doesn't have to be corny, and it doesn't have to be cutesy or cheesy or whatever. Like, just write a romance book that is set during the Christmas time. Like, I don't know why that's so difficult. But yeah, this one, I wouldn't even recommend it. It's not worth even wasting an ounce of your time on it. Like, it's a fine book, but it's not anything that's going to be like, wow, that was a great way to spend 4 hours, you know? Because I believe that the audiobook is about 4.5 hours long. Though I guess if you read it on 2x speed, it's technically like 2 hours long, but still, I wouldn't even waste 2 hours on this book. And unfortunately I did. If I could go back in time, I would have just DNF'd it. The next book that I read in December was A Court of Sugar and Spice by Rebecca F. Kinney. And this is a Nutcracker retelling, like a very like dark romance, spicy retelling. It was really fun, I will say that. And I did like some of the characters and some of like the writing moments. Like, the writing style was kind of interesting. I did really enjoy the world building and the way that this author implemented the Nutcracker storyline into this dark romance. If you ever read the book by Anne Rice that she wrote under a pseudonym, I believe it's called, I can never remember what it's called, but it's a Sleeping Beauty dark romance retelling. If you've ever read that book, it's very similar to this one. And I have read that Anne Rice Sleeping Beauty retelling, and I will say that this one is better because it has more of like a plot, it has more of like character development, it has more of a story compared to the Anne Rice book, but the dark romance elements are very similar. So just as a warning, I will say that this author did include trigger warnings, which I absolutely love. I've noticed so many more romance authors are including trigger warnings at the beginning of their books, which I think is incredible. I personally don't use trigger warnings or content warnings. I don't really find them super helpful, but I do notice them and I think that that's really cool. So highly recommend checking out those trigger warnings if you do want to read this book, because like I said, there are very dark elements in this romance. So I think it's better just to be forewarned before you go into this book. The next book that I read was Cult Following: The Extreme Sects That Capture Our Imaginations and Take Over Our Lives by J.W. Walker. This is a nonfiction book. It kind of covers a lot of different cults, so it doesn't really get to spend a lot of time on each one of them. But I will say the one thing that I really enjoyed about this book is that it details cults that I have never heard of, that were completely new to me, that I had never seen covered before. So I thought that was really intriguing because I did read the book Cultish by, I believe, Amanda Montell, and I felt like that book was just very basic, and I felt like she really just took a lot of the like very popular, very well-known cults and kind of like did a very brief, vague Wikipedia summary of each of those cults, which I personally did not enjoy. However, with this book, I felt like at least like even if the details weren't like super long or, you know, super in depth or anything like that. I kind of felt like it took a bit more of a personal approach to these cults, which I really appreciated. And like I said, I just really enjoyed the fact that it went into cults that were really unique and that people don't really talk about very often. So if you are really interested in cults, if you have consumed any media about them and you feel like you are kind of like running out of stuff to read or listen to or whatever, I highly recommend picking up Cult Following. It was a really, really fun book. And the very last book that I read in the month of December was The Doover by Suzanne Park. This is a romance book. It is very kind of like fall themed in a way, because it is kind of about going back to school, and it basically follows this woman. I believe that she might be in her late 20s, early 30s, and she is kind of like a, not really a business consultant, what would you call that? Like, she kind of writes self-help books for working women of color, and she's trying to write her newest book, and she ends up finding out that she actually didn't complete all of the necessary credits in order to graduate from college. And so she has to go back to college and has to repeat some of her missed credits. And when she's there, she ends up running into one of her ex-boyfriends who is a TA, and I believe that he's working towards his master's or his doctorate, I can't remember. And it does really kind of follow that trope of the girl failure, which I believe I might have talked about in one of my Vlogmas episodes, but I can't remember at this point if it ever made it to a Vlogmas episode. And I will say that I liked the first half of this book. I was really intrigued. I really liked the writing style. I thought it was super funny. However, I felt like once it got to the halfway point and beyond, it really lost me. I just did not enjoy this book. I didn't enjoy the ending. I just felt like this book should not have been marketed or like categorized as a romance book, because the romance is really non-existent. It's kind of like a second chance romance book, but I feel like from the second chance romance books that I have read, a lot of them are really not focused on creating the romance, on developing the romance between these two characters. I feel like the authors that write this trope specifically feel like the audience should just assume that these characters have romantic feelings towards each other, that these characters are compatible because they've been in a relationship before, but that was like all off page, so you don't really get to see any of that development or the way that these two characters interact romantically. Like, you just don't get to see that on page. However, the author wants you to believe that it's happened, and for me that just doesn't work. And that's why I feel like I don't tend to gravitate towards the second chance romance trope, because authors, I feel like, just use it as a way to be lazy. And I want to be able to see two characters interact with each other and like really get to know each other and really display the romance. However, for this book, I felt like the romance was like maybe 15% of the book. The majority of the book was about this main character and about her mistakes and about like her trying to get her footing back and trying to gain confidence in herself, which is like, that's fine. But I went into this book looking for a romance book, not really like a women's fiction book, if that makes sense. I feel like if you're gonna write a romance book, you're gonna market it as a romance book. The romance needs to be the main plot. It can't be a subplot. It can't be an afterthought. It has to be the main focus of your book. You can have other things going on around this character and about this character and whatever, but everything needs to come back to the romance, and I just didn't feel like that was happening in this book. So yeah, unfortunately, I didn't like it. It really left 2024 on a sour note, and so that was really a big bummer. Like, this entire month was just such a bad reading month. I felt like most of the books, besides maybe one or two of them, I really did not like. So yeah, unfortunately, December was absolutely terrible and just a really bad way to end 2024. However, I'm hoping that 2025 will be a lot better, and I hope that you guys had a better December reading month. Like, I don't know what happened, but the books I was picking up just were not doing it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this December wrap up. I can't wait to do more wrap ups in the new year. If you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All the links should be down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!